The morning I woke up to find my face plastered across downtown billboards, towering over the city like a goddess of revenge. I knew that every single tear I had cried was worth this moment. But let me take you back to where this story really begins, because the sweetest victories always have the most bitter beginnings. My name is Lena, and 18 months ago, I was just another girl in love with a man who saw me as convenient rather than essential. Trent was 26, charming in that dangerous way that makes smart women make stupid decisions, and absolutely convinced that he was destined for greatness in the fashion industry. He had started a streetwear brand called Alpha Mode, which at the time consisted of exactly 12 hoodies stacked in our shared apartment, and a dream that felt bigger than both of us combined. I believed in that dream. More than that, I believed in him, which turned out to be the most expensive mistake I would ever make. Those early days were intoxicating in their possibility. Trent would pace around our tiny living room, gesturing wildly as he described his vision for Alpha Mode. How it would revolutionize streetwear, how it would become the uniform of a generation, how we would build an empire together. The way he said "we" made my heart flutter, made me feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. I threw myself into his dream with the kind of reckless abandon that only comes from being young and stupid and desperately in love. I spent my evenings after my day job hunched over my laptop, teaching myself graphic design, so I could create his first logo. I modeled his prototype hoodies in our backyard, contorting my body into poses that would showcase the clothing while hiding the fact that we could not afford a professional photographer. I wrote his social media captions, managed his customer service emails, and even pretended to be his team when brands reached out for collaborations. I would answer emails with signatures like Lena Martinez, Creative Director, Alpha Mode, or Lena Martinez, Brand Manager, creating the illusion that his one-man operation was actually a thriving company with multiple employees. The lies felt justified because we were building something together. Every late night, every unpaid hour, every sacrifice I made was an investment in our shared future. When Alpha Mode succeeded, we would succeed. When Trent made it big, we would make it big together. For months, it felt like we were living in a beautiful bubble of shared ambition. Trent would show me prototypes and ask for my opinion. He would bounce marketing ideas off me over dinner. He would hold me close in bed and whisper about the life we were going to build, the success we were going to achieve, the recognition we were going to earn. I should have noticed when the pronouns started changing. When we became I and our brand became my brand. I should have paid attention when he stopped asking for my input and started treating my contributions like they were optional rather than essential. I should have seen the red flags when he began talking about brand image and target demographics, with the kind of cold calculation that treats people like statistics rather than human beings. But I was in love, and love makes you blind to everything except what you want to see. The first real sign of trouble came when Alpha Mode started gaining traction. Trent had managed to get a few micro-influencers to wear his hoodies in exchange for free products, and suddenly his Instagram followers jumped from 300 to 3,000 practically overnight. It was not massive success, but it was progress, and progress was intoxicating. That was when I started noticing the changes in his behavior. He became obsessed with his phone, constantly checking engagement rates and analyzing which posts performed best. He started talking about the algorithm and brand alignment like they were religious concepts. He began spending hours researching other successful streetwear brands, studying their models, their aesthetics, their marketing strategies. More troubling was how he started looking at me. Where he used to see a partner, I could feel him beginning to see a problem. I was not polished enough, not Instagram ready enough, not conventionally beautiful enough to fit the image he was crafting for his brand. I could see him mentally cataloging my flaws, the way my hair looked messy in the morning, the fact that I wore sweatpants when I worked from home, the reality that I looked like a real person rather than a filtered fantasy. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. We were having dinner at our kitchen table, the same table where we had planned our future just months before, when Trent cleared his throat in that way that meant he had something important to say. "I have been thinking about the direction of the brand," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "And I think we need to talk about some changes." I set down my fork, a cold dread settling in my stomach. "What kind of changes?" He took a deep breath, like he was preparing to deliver difficult news that he had been rehearsing. I love you, Lena. You know that. But I think we need to separate your role in my personal life from your role in the business. What does that mean? I asked, though I was already beginning to understand. It means that I need to think about what is best for Alpha Mode, not what is comfortable for us personally. And honestly, you are just not the look I want for my brand. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not the look he wanted. After everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had contributed, I was being dismissed because I did not fit his aesthetic vision. I helped you build this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I designed your logo. I modeled your first campaign. I wrote your content. I managed your customers. I pretended to be your team when you had no team. And I appreciate that, he said, his tone patronizing in a way that made my skin crawl. But that was when we were just starting out. Now that we are growing, I need to think strategically about brand representation. I need someone more aspirational. Aspirational. Like I was some kind of cautionary tale rather than the woman who had believed in him when no one else would. You mean you need someone hotter? I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. He shrugged, not even having the decency to deny it. I need someone who fits the vision. Someone who makes people want to be part of what we are building. You are smart and supportive, but you are not really brand-facing material. I stared at him across the table, this man I had loved, this man I had supported, this man I had lifted up when he was nothing but dreams and ambition. He was sitting there calmly explaining to me that I was not beautiful enough to be associated with the company I had helped create. I could have screamed. I could have thrown my dinner plate at his head. I could have listed every single thing I had done for him, every sacrifice I had made, every way I had contributed to his success. I could have reminded him that without me, Alpha Mode would still be a pile of hoodies in our living room and a half-formed idea in his head. Instead, I nodded. I understand, I said, standing up from the table with as much dignity as I could muster. You need someone more aspirational. He looked relieved, like he had been expecting a much bigger fight. I knew you would get it. You have always been so reasonable about these things. Reasonable. That was what I was to him now. Reasonable. Convenient. Disposable. I walked to our bedroom, packed a bag with my essential items and left that night. I did not slam the door. I did not leave a dramatic note. I did not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I just quietly removed myself from his life and his business, exactly like he wanted. But what Trent did not understand was that I was not disappearing. I was strategically retreating, and there is a massive difference between those two things. The first few weeks after leaving were brutal. I crashed on my friend Maya's couch, and spent my days applying for jobs while trying to process the emotional devastation of being rejected by someone I had loved. I felt humiliated, worthless, like I had been weighed and measured and found wanting. But slowly, as the initial shock wore off, I began to feel something else. Anger. Not the hot, impulsive kind of anger that makes you do stupid things, but the cold, calculating kind of anger that makes you dangerous. Trent had used me, dismissed me, and thrown me away like I was nothing. He had taken my contributions for granted, and decided that I was not good enough to be associated with the success I had helped create. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I started by doing what I should have done months earlier. I began investing in myself. I took the money I had been spending on groceries and rent while living with Trent, and put it toward a gym membership, a wardrobe upgrade and professional headshots. Not because I believed his assessment of my appearance, but because I needed to rebuild my confidence and prepare for what came next. I also started paying attention to the fashion industry in a way I never had before. I researched Alpha Mode's competitors, studied their marketing strategies, analyzed their brand positioning. I learned about luxury streetwear, about the companies that were dominating the space, about the gaps in the market that smart brands could exploit. That was how I discovered Venom Threads. Venom Threads was everything Alpha Mode wanted to be but could never achieve. Where Alpha Mode was trying desperately to seem edgy and cool, Venom Threads was effortlessly sophisticated. Where Alpha Mode relied on basic hoodies and obvious branding, Venom Threads created pieces that were art as much as they were clothing. Where alpha mode marketed to insecure young men trying to prove their masculinity, Venom Threads appealed to confident people of all genders who saw fashion as self-expression rather than performance. More importantly, Venom Threads was about to open their first flagship store in our city, directly across the street from the pop-up shop that Alpha Mode had recently launched. I spent weeks studying everything I could about Venom Threads. I followed their social media accounts, read interviews with their creative director, analyzed their brand philosophy. I learned that they were built on the principle of authentic self-expression, that they believed fashion should empower people rather than make them feel inadequate, that they were actively looking for models who represented real people rather than impossible standards. In other words, they were everything that Alpha Mode was not. I also learned that their creative director, a woman named Sophia Chun, had been following my personal Instagram account for months. My personal account, which had nothing to do with Alpha Mode, which featured photos of me living my actual life rather than performing some manufactured version of femininity. When I realized that someone at Venom Threads had been paying attention to me as an individual rather than as an extension of Trent's brand, I knew I had found my opportunity. I spent a week crafting the perfect email to Sophia. Not a desperate plea for work, but a professional inquiry about potential collaboration opportunities. I mentioned my background in brand development, my experience with social media marketing, and my interest in working with companies that aligned with my values. I attached my headshots and a portfolio of the work I had done, carefully omitting any mention of Alpha Mode or my relationship with Trent. Sophia responded within 24 hours. "I have been hoping you would reach out," her email said. "Your aesthetic and energy are exactly what we look for in our brand ambassadors. Would you be available for a call this week to discuss a potential campaign?" The call turned into a meeting. The meeting turned into a photo shoot. The photo shoot turned into something I had never dared to dream. A full brand ambassadorship with one of the most respected names in luxury streetwear. But it was not just about the money or the recognition, though both were substantial. It was about the fact that Sophia and her team saw something in me that Trent had been blind to. They saw strength where he had seen inadequacy. They saw authenticity where he had seen unmarketability. They saw potential where he had seen limitation. The campaign they designed around me was called Be the Mold. And it was built on the philosophy that true style came from confidence rather than conformity. The tagline was perfect. Do not fit the mold. Be the mold. We shot the campaign over 3 days, and every single moment felt like a form of therapy. Instead of contorting myself to hide my flaws, I was being directed to showcase my strength. Instead of trying to disappear into the background, I was being encouraged to take up space. Instead of being told I was not enough, I was being celebrated for exactly who I was. The hero shot was everything I had ever wanted to embody. Me in a crimson bodysuit that fit like it had been designed specifically for my body. My hair slicked back in a style that emphasized the sharp angles of my face. My eyes locked directly with the camera in a gaze that dared anyone to look away. I looked powerful. I looked confident. I looked like someone who could not be dismissed or underestimated. I looked like everything Trent had told me I could never be. The campaign was scheduled to launch on October 17th, which happened to be Trent's birthday. Sophia had not known this when she chose the date, but when I mentioned the coincidence, she smiled in a way that made me think it might not stay a coincidence for long. "Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor," she said. "And sometimes we help the universe along." The week leading up to the launch was surreal. I signed contracts that guaranteed me more money than I had ever seen in my life. I did interviews with fashion magazines about body positivity and authentic representation. I attended events where industry professionals treated me like someone worth knowing rather than someone worth tolerating. Most importantly, I began to see myself the way other people saw me rather than the way Trent had conditioned me to see myself. I was not too ordinary or too unmarketable or too anything. I was exactly what I was supposed to be, and that was more than enough. The night before the launch, I could not sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I was excited in a way that felt almost electric. Tomorrow my face would be on billboards across the city. Tomorrow, I would officially become the face of a brand that represented everything I believed in. Tomorrow, Trent would wake up to discover that the woman he had dismissed as not hot enough was now impossible to ignore. The billboards went live at sunrise on October 17th. Sophia had arranged for me to be there when the Alpha Mode billboard was unveiled, directly across from Trent's pop-up shop. We stood together on the sidewalk, watching as workers removed the covering to reveal my face, 50 feet tall and impossible to miss. The image was even more powerful than I had imagined. The crimson bodysuit looked like liquid fire against the gray morning sky. My expression was fierce, confident, unapologetic. The tagline, "Do not fit the mold. Be the mold," seemed to glow with defiant energy. "How does it feel?" Sophia asked, standing beside me as we admired the work we had created together. "It feels like justice," I said, and I meant every word. Within hours, the campaign was trending on social media. Fashion bloggers were posting about the powerful imagery and the message of authentic self-expression. Influencers were sharing stories about times they had been told they were not enough, using my campaign as inspiration to reject those limitations. But the real vindication came when I saw Trent's reaction. I did not seek him out or try to orchestrate a confrontation. I did not need to. By noon, Maya was texting me screenshots of his social media activity, and it was clear that he was spiraling. He had posted a story showing the view from his pop-up shop, my billboard dominating the frame, with the caption, "Interesting marketing strategy thinking faced." But you could hear the panic in his virtual voice, the desperate attempt to seem unbothered by something that was clearly devastating him. His DMs, according to mutual friends, were full of messages asking if that was his ex-girlfriend on the billboard. His business partner was fielding calls from people who wanted to know if Alpha Mode was affiliated with Venom Threads. His new girlfriend, the aspirational model he had started dating after our breakup, had posted a selfie wearing Venom Threads merchandise with the caption, "Obsessed with this brand." By the end of the week, Alpha Mode had lost 2 major sponsorship deals. Apparently, being publicly associated with a man who had very publicly dismissed his girlfriend for not being hot enough was not the kind of brand alignment that companies wanted. The woman he had replaced me with had broken up with him after seeing my campaign, realizing that she was just another disposable placeholder in his quest for the perfect brand ambassador. His social media engagement had plummeted as people began to see him as someone who valued surface over substance. Meanwhile, my career was exploding in ways I had never imagined possible. The Venom Threads campaign led to other opportunities, magazine covers, brand partnerships, speaking engagements about authenticity in fashion and marketing. I was no longer someone's forgotten girlfriend trying to prove her worth. I was a successful professional who had built her own career on her own terms. The most satisfying moment came 3 months later, when I was featured on the cover of a major fashion magazine with the headline, "The New Face of Authentic Beauty." The article detailed my journey from behind-the-scenes supporter to successful brand ambassador, highlighting how I had transformed rejection into opportunity. In the interview, I was asked about my relationship with Alpha Mode, and whether my success was motivated by revenge. "Revenge would imply that I did this to hurt someone else," I said. "But everything I have accomplished, I did for myself. I did it to prove to myself that I was capable of more than I had been told. The fact that it happened to demonstrate someone else's poor judgment is just a pleasant side effect." Trent tried to contact me several times after the article came out. He sent long emails about how proud he was of my success, how he had always known I had potential, how he hoped we could find a way to reconnect as friends. Each message was more desperate than the last, a transparent attempt to rewrite history and position himself as someone who had always believed in me. I never responded, not because I was angry, but because he had become irrelevant. His opinion of me, positive or negative, no longer had any power over my life or my self-worth. He was just someone I used to know, someone who had accidentally given me the motivation I needed to discover my own strength. Alpha Mode folded 6 months later. Trent tried to pivot to other business ventures, but his reputation in the fashion industry was permanently damaged. He had become known as the guy who had thrown away a loyal partner in pursuit of superficial success, and that kind of story does not inspire confidence in potential collaborators or investors. I heard through mutual friends that he moved back in with his parents and took a job at a marketing firm, far removed from the fashion industry he had once dreamed of conquering. I felt no satisfaction in his failure, No vindictive pleasure in his downfall. I just felt free, free from his judgment, free from his limitations, free from the version of myself that had once believed his assessment of my worth. These days, when I walk past that billboard location downtown, I think about the woman I was 18 months ago. The woman who had been told she was not hot enough, not aspirational enough, not good enough to represent a brand she had helped build. I think about how small she felt, how worthless, how disposable. And then I think about the woman I am now. The woman whose face sells luxury merchandise, whose story inspires other women to reject limitations, whose success speaks louder than anyone's criticism ever could. I did not set out to destroy Trent's career or humiliate him publicly. I set out to build something beautiful for myself, to prove that I was capable of more than anyone had imagined. The fact that my success highlighted his poor judgment was not revenge. It was simply the natural consequence of his decision to underestimate someone who was always meant for more than he could envision. He said I was not hot enough for his brand. Now his brand will never be hot again. And I look better on a billboard than he ever will in real life. But more importantly, I have learned that the only person whose opinion of my worth matters is me. And I have finally learned to see myself clearly. I am not the mold. I am not trying to fit the mold. I am exactly what I was always meant to be. Someone who creates her own standards, defines her own success, and refuses to let anyone else determine her value. And that, it turns out, is the hottest thing of all. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of women who turned rejection into revolution, pain into power, and criticism into career-defining success. Every story proves that when someone tells you that you are not enough, they are really just showing you exactly how much you are capable of achieving without them. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of unstoppable women who refuse to let anyone else define their worth.